Hello, 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 hello. Late in the evening, but I'm still going to have my live chat. This is Ronald Allen, Managing Change Through Effective Communications. Today's discussion, the value of strategic customer service, services in brackets, and the last word is all about engagement. And I'm going to share with you three short stories, three examples, if you will, of how being effective through engagement with the intent of bringing value for your clients, for your relationships. It's Valentine's night, and I'm sure many of you are wooing, or as they say in the South, voiding your loved ones, and so you should. And for those who don't, voide yourself, right? So the discussion is all about customer service. And in fact, I'm looking at a fairly large Valentine's card, which my wife gave me some time ago, which I actually have in my office privately displayed for myself. And it's all about, which is interesting about tonight's discussion. I didn't tie the two in until I'm just starting to reread it. And what's interesting, it says, it's the simple times when we're talking about anything and everything. It's the groundwork we lay that allows us to engage with our customers, engage with one another, engage with our family members in a more meaningful manner. And I'm going to preface it with three short examples of what people did for me when I just gave of myself, when I just gave them information that was common to myself, that I thought was helpful, beneficial, and in one particular case, just conversational, okay? But first, before we get there, Valentine's Day, a very interesting commercial day that has become, perhaps for some, a torrid environment, a frustrating expression that may be not exactly earnest. On the other hand, other people kind of go overboard. Well, I like to kind of smooth out, the hills, the peaks, and the valleys. And what's interesting is about a week and a half ago, my wife wasn't feeling too good, and I gave her something, a bouquet of flowers. And many people in the store said, well, it's not Valentine's yet. And I said, that has nothing to do with it. It is when you lay the groundwork before you need the benefits, before they're requested, before you even engage in trying to sell, okay, for those salespeople out there, before you begin to sell. It's like lining up your shot. It's like preparing, being ready. You know the expression, opportunity favors those who are prepared. How are you preparing yourself? Do you prepare the morning of the event, or have you been preparing the night, the week before you need to perform? You know, some of the most famous vocalists will tell you if they miss a day, they know the difference. If they miss a week, their instructors, their coaches recognize the difference. If they miss a month, not only do all their contingency who help to make their performance 113%, moreover, their audience begins to recognize something is different. And that kind of goes back to the point when we talk about 85-90% of communications is non-verbal. You know, in many parts of the country, people go about with horse blinders. That is a form of communication. That is a form of communication that says, I do not wish to be engaged. If we're going to go about our life expecting people to give us things, and I'll give you another one. I just thought about this one about on LinkedIn. Just write that down a little bit. I believe in the notes, right? Because when you think of something, you put it into a concept, you write it down, it becomes more purposeful. Just the act alone of engaging the mind, of being willing to write things down, even if you wish to type them down on a Google Drive so that you can pull them up based on Boolean search criteria. It's the act that provides the benefit. So too then, with when we talk about the value of the strategic customer service intent. So take out the word service and we can say the value of strategic customer engagement. So here are my now 4 little stories. Working with a group of Lockheed engineers who are significantly more intelligent and more capable than myself in their area of expertise. And we were talking about how the younger members, the younger engineers, whose baseline of knowledge is more grounded and more substantial than what the older engineers had to learn firsthand, had to learn through experiential engagement in those areas of study, physics, chemistry, all of that. What was interesting was when I brought up the fact that their baseline of the younger engineers was higher and that their understanding of acceptable concepts was already in place, whereas the older members, like myself, are having to relearn, having to add another layer. It's like that 4-layer cake, right? Or the 15-layer lasagna. Yes, at the Spaghetti Warehouse in Pittsburgh. Everyone on the train to Pittsburgh for that 15-layer lasagna? Add a little wine to that sauce, please. Leave it there for 24 hours to marinate, and we are cool. Anyway, back to my Lockheed engineers. They appreciated that perspective. It wasn't just a matter of, and again, because they're steeped in that discipline, they are not focusing on the communication aspect or the dynamics of the communication. They're focused on creating IT, creating chemical balances. They're focused on the technology that needs to work for a piece of machinery to engage and function and interface with other pieces of machinery. Signals, all kinds of manageable IT issues that I have no idea about, but I love listening to it and trying to understand its application. And that's what I'm good at, understanding applications and then making a reference so that people can possibly use it, possibly subscribe to adopting that mindset. And what they then allowed me to do was have access to some of their somewhat sensitive information so that I could learn how their systems work, so that I could then bring someone who is a highly technical scientist, actual scientist, and begin to help them communicate to someone who is not, because that wasn't their job. It wasn't to communicate with people, it was to design something, it was to build something, it was to create one system that would talk to another system, not a person. Very different, right? Very different mode and thought process that requires rapport building first, which we all seem to forget. Many of us, correcting myself there, many of us seem to forget when we're engaging with another human being. Machineries are different, right? And that was an incredible opportunity to really get in the heads of people who are highly academic in their field, and then begin to realize that, you know what, I need to take a little time so that I'm making sure the person understands what this is all about. Not just that the machine works, not just that the code is speaking correctly to the codes are speaking correctly to one another. Another opportunity, again, when we talk about the value of strategic engagement, right, of strategic customer engagement, was a family I was working with. This is some coaching work I do. And they happened to board foster children. And the children were always seeming to act out. And I said to them, and I even noticed it when I walked into the home, I said, it's a little dark in here. They said, well, we're trying to cut back and on expenses. Lighting is a big issue because the kids leave the lights on all night, so we try and compensate during the day if it was very, and at the time it was raining and it was cloudy and therefore it was very dark. And I just thought for a minute, a paper I did in college about the Hawthorne Experiments, some of you may know, in Philadelphia, an engineer found that the emotional state, and of course you see today, lighting has taken on a whole different persona, both in concerts, in the work environment, in conference centers and banquet halls, and certainly now even in the home with these different types of LEDs, etc. type of lighting, the fluorescent tube, gas, argon, etc. And what I shared with them was that in this experiment, in a factory setting, production rose, personalities began to level off, the heightened reaction to the simplest of things began to level off when there was appropriate light. Just as in my home, I love light. Even when it's dark outside, I need the windows, the curtain, at least the curtains open, so that natural light comes in. That's an emotional stimulation for me. And in this experiment that the Hawthorne, you can look this up, the Hawthorne Experiments, they found that the incandescent lights, and certainly the older tube lighting, did not provide enough illumination in the work environment. People were people were having accidents. There was unpleasantness. The mood in that factory was certainly affected. I said, what if you allowed the children to have some more lighting? And it was a simple thing. I mean, you would never think of it. Yet, in walking in, I felt impacted, and the children certainly felt that they needed more lighting, but it was a parental decision, an executive decision, not to. Well, within a week or two, I found that they could have more lighting. They changed. Yes, it's more expensive. These LEDs, I believe, they're more expensive, yet the usage, the watt usage, therefore cost, was reduced. And in fact, because we went to the utility company, because of their fostering children, there was actually programs that can help them. Once again, it had nothing to do with my coaching somebody. It was my